The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style.
Kosiorek, Superintendent of the Hilton Central School District. This podcast is going to be titled Consultin with Casey. Casey, it's very nice to have you on. I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I've really enjoyed watching you and how you've evolved with your podcast. And what I love about it from the perspective of a community member and the superintendent is we're memorializing history, some great stories. Really, when you talk about culture and you talk about pride, it's built on storytelling. Mm-hmm. And the storytelling that's happening on your podcast is just awesome. And I think it's so great when we have new employees or new community members that I meet. I always tell them, hey, check out the Big H Podcast, because you can learn about some of the things that aren't always apparent every day in your face for the great people that have come before us and that are amongst us as well. So thanks for having me.
And thank you. And when I talked to Nancy Laporte, who's big into the Alumni Association, she was a guest, and I said, do you have any recommendations? And your name came right up, and we just haven't been able to connect, but now we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're in a huge position in the school district. Was there a particular time in your life, your career, when you decided, I think I want to become a superintendent?
Never. So I started.
That's why you're a good one.
well, maybe, but I think I started out. I was a high school athlete. And I was getting ready to make a decision on what I wanted to do moving forward. And I really enjoyed all of my experiences as an athlete. I wasn't the strongest student. I really liked to socialize. There were a lot of things I liked to do, mm-hmm. and studies wasn't always at the forefront. But I built relationships with people, and I really enjoyed the team atmosphere, and I liked athletics. So I ended up deciding to become a physical education teacher. So I went off and got my physical education degree at Canisius College. I played football there as well, and became a phys ed teacher. I taught high school physical education for 8 years, and I absolutely loved it. And then I started to get the itch, and I wanted to be an athletic director. Mm-hmm. I thought that was the next step. It's something that I really liked. I liked the classroom, and there's often days I miss the classroom, but I wanted to potentially be able to influence some different aspects within the district. Yeah. So I went to administrator school. My colleagues had some other names for that, but I went forward, and they always asked me, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be in that type of role? And I just said, well, I think I've sat on a lot of interview committees for people, and I've seen what candidates are out there, and I think I could do a good job. So I ended up getting into the classwork, and I think maybe the first semester, I was like, I'm kind of intrigued now with the building principalship or an mm-hmm. assistant principal. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up earning my degree and then becoming an assistant principal. I was an AP in Leroy. Okay. That's where I first met Nancy Laporte. Okay. She was, she worked, led one of the churches out there, and we had worked on a backpack program very early. It was with Jim Thompson, who was my mentor. And it originated in Tyler, Texas, where kids were going home on the weekend hungry. So we worked with all the clergy people and the school district to make sure that the kids in need went home with a backpack full of food. So fast forward, I became the principal in Leroy, and then I was up actually at that point in time, whether this is right or wrong, members of the Board of Education in Leroy had approached me to apply for the superintendency. And I was the ripe young age of 34 years old. So my wife and I talked about it, and I said, yeah, let's give it a whirl. Mm-hmm. And I was the runner-up. They ended up choosing another candidate. So once I had gone through the process, I was like, wow, I think I really might like to do this. So the following year, I had been approached by a search consultant who was leading this process in Byron Burgeon Central School District. So I applied and went through the process, and I became the superintendent there. I was there for 4 years, and I was very happy. It was a great school district, great people. It was a smaller district. It's around 1,000 students, universal pre-K through 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the opportunity, someone approached me about the opening here at Hilton, and the rest is history. And in January, I'll be entering my 10th year here in the district.
Nice. So what were the changes when you came from Byron Burgeon, 1,000 students in the district, to Hilton? What was that change like?
Well, Hilton is you're drinking out of a fire hose.
Mm-hmm.
Things are coming quickly. You have 4,500 students. You have 4 times the size of Byron Burgeon. So things moved at a certain pace, and it was great for my learning at Byron Burgeon. But once you got here, it's much faster moving. And so that was a bit of an adjustment. Very similar issues or problems to be solved or initiatives. You're just dealing at a little faster pace because of the size of the district.
And how are you able to balance the time now? And you can talk a little bit about your wife, your daughter, and your two sons too.
Yeah,
how do you
absolutely
balance all that?
So it's definitely a lifestyle. One of the things that I would always encourage people to do is to live where they work. It can be challenging at times. We've had some times in the district where I maybe thought, oh, it would be a little different if I wasn't living in the district.
Mm-hmm.
But so my wife, Debbie, and I, she was a math teacher at Batavia Middle School.
Oh.
We were introduced by a friend that I played football with who happened to be a social studies teacher on our team.
Okay.
So we met, and she knew me when I was teaching, and then when I became an entry-level administrator. And then I have 3 children. Kate is actually a senior at Hilton High School. Matthew's a sophomore, and John is in 8th grade. And they do pretty well. They do pretty well. We have a good mindset about what Dad's job is and what it entails. And I don't really discuss work at home. I kind of check it at the door.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be fair to them, and it wouldn't be fair to the people that I work with. There's a lot of confidentiality. There's a lot of stuff up here that goes nowhere past that, and that's something that's interesting. Whether I'm I stopped to get Kelly's Donuts on Sunday morning, and I had some conversations about some issues that were happening at the high school. So when you're in public, you're always on.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah. You have to choose. You have to want to be all in, and you have to make some, I don't want to call them sacrifices because relatively speaking, it is a job, but there are certain things that other families who might not be in a role like that don't have to think about. And we have to be very thoughtful, and because we want to do our best job as the superintendent and the superintendent's family. That's very important to us. We care greatly about Hilton, and it's a change. You're probably not going to see me having a beer at a bar or doing something like that. I like to drink beer, but I'm very thoughtful with who I am. I'm a person, I'm a human being, and I know that you and I have a decent relationship, and hopefully you see me for a person outside of the superintendency. But those are all things you have to consider, and that can be, going through COVID was a really challenging time. Now there's a little heat on snow days, right? My kids will take a little heat every once in a while. One time I was at a wrestling match with my middle son. He's a sophomore now, but he was in grade school, and these 2 high school girls came over, and they're like, Dr. Kosiorek, can we have a snow day? And he looked up at me and he goes, really? You make that decision? And so we hadn't talked about that. So we really try to keep it as normal as possible.
Mm-hmm. So getting back to your wife, you said you met her in Batavia as she was a math teacher?
Yeah. So she's originally from Rochester, and she had moved out to Syracuse. She was a math teacher at Fayetteville Manulus. She wanted to come back, so she got a job at Batavia. And then a gentleman that I had played high school football with and gone to high school with, and then we played in college together. He was a social studies teacher on her team, and he just said, I know this really nice girl. She's a math teacher with me. on my team. Would you ever like to meet her? And I said, absolutely. And then we kind of hit it off and went from there. And once we had our family, Deb stepped away from teaching to raise the kids. And yeah, it's kind of been history. We've been a great team that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I would do this job if we didn't have the situation that we had, because it's very challenging. So this allows me to focus on Hilton. So being able to be at the different events and be very plugged into the community. So yeah, Deb's great. We've been married 20 years. We celebrate our anniversary in August, and yeah, it's a great thing.
So you remembered the anniversary, which is
absolutely good. It may or may not be inscribed on my wedding band.
So when you were doing your coursework for administration school and getting your leadership thing, I think you got it from the U of R.
I got my doctorate from the University of Rochester.
Were you married at that time when you were doing all that coursework?
I was. So that's huge sacrifice too. So not only the position, but the education. You know, my kids ask me, well, how long did you go to school? Well, I've got 11 years of education. I always say I'm overeducated. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I had a master's in education after my bachelor's. Then the second master's was from SUNY Brockport in educational administration. And then the doctorate was 3 years at University of Rochester. So it's a drain on your time. It causes you to make some sacrifices to make that happen. But when it's finished, it's worth it. You know, it made me a better person. Like I said, early on in high school, I wasn't the most studious person, and maybe I matured a little later. Mm-hmm. But through my process, it just helped me be a better communicator, a better writer. I was able to think more globally, so it was very beneficial.
And you went to Brockport High School or Batavia High School?
I went to Batavia High School. Then I went off to Canisius College. Then I did a degree at SUNY Brockport, and then I finished my education at U of R.
Okay, good. Where were you born, and talk a little bit about your parents and any siblings that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Batavia, New York. I was kind of on the outskirts, so it was considered rural. Batavia, they refer to it as a city, but it's not really a city. It's smaller in nature. But grew up in Batavia. I went to elementary school at St. Joseph's parochial school, and that was important for our family. And then I went to the big day. A lot of my friends were headed off to Notre Dame High School. That's where my father was alumni. My mother was a graduate of Batavia High School. It was interesting. My mother is an immigrant. She's passed, but she's an immigrant from England. She came over to the United States. She lived in Liverpool, and she came over when she was a senior in high school. So my father had met her, and that's how that kind of happened. But so yeah, growing up in Batavia, I wanted to go to Notre Dame with my friends. My parents sat me down and said, at that point in time, Notre Dame was graduating like 20 students. And they said, although we would like to send you there, we think that the best opportunities for you are at Batavia. Mm-hmm. So after, a temper tantrum and maybe some tears, I accepted the fact that I was going to Batavia. And I started out playing football. I had played youth football, but football was a big part of me in that transition over to the public school, because I was able to build a lot of relationships with the guys during double sessions. So I felt very acclimated come the first day of class. And I absolutely loved my experience at Batavia High School. It was awesome.
Any other sports that you played there at Batavia, or was it just football?
I played basketball for some time. I came to JV tryouts, and I had gotten mononucleosis, and I missed the tryouts. And after missing the tryouts, I never got really back into basketball. I committed myself to the weight room for football.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned a little bit handling COVID and the pandemic. Describe a tough day as the life of a superintendent, because things are coming at you like the fire hose.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that COVID was so challenging. And what I always try to help people understand is that I take an oath of office to carry out the Constitution of New York State. And there are a lot of times I don't necessarily on a personal level agree with what New York State is doing,
right?
Whether it's academics, whether it was the way that they handled COVID. But in my position, because I've taken an oath of office and I can't violate that oath of office, I have to sometimes carry out some marching orders that I may not 100% agree with. So I think back to masking, and I think there was a time when masking possibly was important. And then there was also a time where maybe they could have been lifted sooner. And folks were asking me, why can't we make the decision at a local level? And I said, I wish we could, but we can't. A lot of people said, well, you don't want to do that because you don't want to lose the funding to schools. And I said, well, I mean, there may be a little truth to that. And I think what people sometimes fail to understand is 50% of our budget comes from New York State.
Okay.
So back in the day when we decided to centralize as a district, we gave up some freedoms by doing that.
Mhm.
So 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So you take away 50% of that because you want to go against the state, your school's not open anymore. Because right. So to me, it's simple math. But for people that aren't in the business of education, sometimes that's a head scratcher.
Right.
And so there's usually some comments about that. But so a difficult day in the superintendency usually has to do with any type of crisis. So whether it's a student that needs extra support or has made a bad decision, or a family who's upset about something that's happened with their student. It could have been a staff member who did something that wasn't okay to do. Those types of urgencies. We lived through the bomb scares.
That's what I was going to.
Yeah, that was between that and the issue that happened at Northwood. Those were really, really horrible situations that really pulled on everybody's leadership. And, the bomb threats were an extreme challenge to, you're evacuating, you're evacuating 4,500 students, 1,000 staff members, and you're trying to do the best you can in that crisis. And, it's easy to sit back and say, well, I would have done this and I would have done that.
Right.
But when you're in that situation, you are making snap decisions. You're sometimes the media can be one of the most overwhelming things because they want answers and they want them now. Rightfully so. Parents are totally upset and concerned about their kids. So they're calling in and they're looking to make sure that their child's doing well and everything's good there. And, so that's really stressful. And that's a very difficult time. You're working with law enforcement to figure out what's going on and who are making these threats. I was very confident that no one was at risk because of what we had known. And I think one of the challenges was I couldn't let the community know everything that I knew.
Right.
Because if I could sit down with you and I saw you at the grocery store and I could tell you what happened, you'd be, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why you did this and why you did that. But unfortunately, in that middle of that crisis, you can't always, you want to be as transparent as possible. And sometimes law enforcement and others will not allow you to be as transparent as you would like to be. And I understand why. There are reasons why you can't say everything that's happening because they have to evaluate some things. But I commend our staff. I commend our students. I commend our families. Because all in all, I think through those situations, although people may disagree with me, I think that we did a pretty decent job of keeping people safe. And since then, you never let a good crisis
go to waste.
Yeah, go to waste. Exactly.
I know who really said that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm stealing it.
No.
But that's the truth, because now I feel and hopefully you've experienced this in your role in the school district. We are now drilling. We know where we're going to go. We know where all those things. I won't get into details because we want to keep that confidential because we don't want bad people to know about that. But we have drills in place and we train on them, and we hope that we don't have to use them. But that came out of a lot of the issues around the bomb threats.
Yeah, we have a reunification drill tomorrow, and one of the things I remember, I forget where we were, but you said once, I think it was to a staff meeting, you will always listen to people, but it doesn't mean you'll always agree with people. And one of the things is I want you to kind of self-reflect. What are some characteristics that you either have innate in you or you've gained over the time that helps you deal with those pressure situations whether it's a pandemic or anything else?
I think you go into like the servant leadership, you almost, you realize that your number one focus is the safety of our students and staff. So you get tunnel vision in the sense that you're very focused on making sure that everybody's safe. So because I had been an athlete and been in some pressure situations before, that definitely helps and then now I'm in my 29th year in public education. I'll be entering my 14th year as a superintendent. I think maybe my 19th as an administrator. over time you gain that wisdom.
Right.
So every experience you have, when you reflect on it and you break it down, it's not a crisis happens, you make decisions, it's all over. Not really. You sit down and you usually debrief, and we're not always public with that debrief. And I do a lot of personal reflection,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? What worked well? So I think over time you gain that experience that makes you a better decision maker in those crisis type situations.
I don't know if you remember, but I thought you, and I even read the book, you talked about a book, I think a Navy SEAL wrote it, and it was about training. And when you're in a crisis situation, you revert back to the highest level of your training.
Absolutely.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Can you bring it up to our listeners?
Yeah. So this guy's a bit extreme, but his name is Dave Goggins. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Michael Wheelhan just said that on the last podcast.
All right.
David got, all right.
Yeah. So
I read the book and he's telling me about it. I'm
yeah,
like,
he's pretty crude. He uses some vulgarities.
Right.
He's got a real interesting story. I think he went to Bud's training 3 or 4 different times and failed out until he eventually became a Navy SEAL. He also became an Army Ranger. He's an ultra marathoner. He's actually from Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
And real interesting story. And then there's another gentleman by the name of Jocko. He just goes by Jocko. He's also a military individual. And both of them talk about being prepared through that training. So if you're always training and doing what you need to do, and you practice at that level, when that crisis comes about, you'll be prepared to the best of your ability.
Gotcha. So you're superintendent. There's so many stakeholders. Talk a little bit about how you work with parents and how you disseminate your message with parents.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really had a focus over the last several years to continue to improve the culture here in the district. Mm-hmm. So we put out a survey. We had some stakeholder groups for our most recent strategic plan, and through those focus groups, sitting down with parents from folks who participated in the surveys, we were able to code the feedback. So kind of the social science piece, going through that qualitative piece of coding the different themes. And some of the themes were around communication. So really have put forward, we now hold a community Zoom forum. That's something that we haven't done in the past. Mm-hmm. And we have folks who attend. We started out doing it quarterly. We didn't have great participation, so we moved to 2 times a year. People are busy, I understand. Right. We went with Zoom because we felt like if a parent was dropping another child off or had to be with their child and they had multiple children in their family, that they would be able to participate that way. So that's gone positive. A lot of communication happens in person. Mm-hmm. I attend a lot of events. Probably the most powerful time for me is when I'm at a student athlete's game or activity. Being in that informal setting, folks will come up to me and share things. And if I can address it, then I certainly do. But if not, I'll be like, hey, I'd like to have you in for coffee. Let's talk about it. A lot of parents like to use email. A lot of community members like to use email. I like phone conversations and in person, but we meet in the middle and a lot of communication. We have our Insight. We have our website. I'm really excited about Dave Yates. Dave Yates is our new director of communication. He really has a great vision for communication of the district. So we're continuing to grow there. I saw you earlier today, and I know this isn't the greater community, but within the learning community here at Hilton, we've put in place listening tours. So, mm-hmm. Yes. The central office staff, Kristen Pelini, Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, Ned Dale, our Assistant Superintendent for HR, and Adam Geist, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, and myself, travel to each school and each department across the district. We have found that to be the most fruitful. So when we can sit down organically and have a conversation, hopefully now we are building trust with folks that they can let us know what's working, what's not working. And over the last couple of years, we found that beneficial. Mm-hmm. We've been able to identify things in a brief conversation that are easy fixes for people. Yeah. And like I said before, and you mentioned it, we will absolutely listen. Some of the things we can resolve, and some of the things that we can't. So we try our best. We really want to make sure that we're removing the pebbles out of people's shoes to avoid that friction in their job. And if there's something easy for us to be able to do that maybe has fallen on deaf ears or hasn't been communicated or whatever, we can do that. Last year when we were at Village Elementary, there was a concern around equity amongst elementary schools and field trips. We were able to resolve that. We made that a strategic action step. We met with the Board of Education. We said, here's the situation. It was brought to our attention during our listening tour to Village, and this is how we're going to rectify it. So there's been many others. I know even the signage outside of Northwood Elementary was traumatizing to people. So we were able to move swiftly and change that sign. That's not something, every day you drive to that school, you might not think about it, but a lot of our families and our staff are thinking about that. So that was something we heard, and we were able to take action. Another example I would say is our most recent homecoming football game. A year prior to that, and this is something they don't teach you in administrative school, is like large event planning. So the football team and the Pride in Hilton and the homecoming parade, it draws a large amount of people.
Right.
And that's not just, hey, we need a couple chaperones. That is, we need to have a Monroe County Sheriff's deputy there. We utilize the special police from Hilton. We had special police on a bicycle patrol. We had special police on golf carts patrolling the parking lot because we had some incidents in the past. Right. We lit the outfield of the softball field because sometimes folks want to go back there and do things that we don't want them to do. So all of those steps resulted in, when you have 5,000 people, 3,000 people, 4,000, you get different numbers on the estimate. But when you put those steps into place, and that was all based off feedback from staff, community members. So we had what we called the huddle the Monday before homecoming. It involved Dave Denzon, our director of safety and security, Dave Yates, our director of communication, Jeff Wheaton, our athletic director. We had both Dr. D'Amico and Dr. Green there. Middle school kids, sometimes when they're left unattended, that causes a lot of cleanup on Monday because maybe some kids made some bad decisions. But coming together and really formulating, Adam Geist was there, and we were really able to formulate a plan. So that was based off that feedback too. So we want to just keep that feedback cycle going. We really want to lift up all of our employees and take ideas. I usually don't have a good idea. If I have a good idea, I've taken it from somebody else. So really, when you start to think in that mindset, you can improve the culture of the organization. When people see that their feedback's being acted on, it's going to make the place a better place.
Because I was one of those, I was a little concerned about one football game. There was a lot of shenanigans in the parking lot or whatever. And that a lot of things get driven by my wife. And on Monday, I sent an email to the powers that be. It wasn't just me. But by that Thursday or that next home game, there were so many other plans put into place that I was like, man, I feel like whether it was me or not, I was heard. Talk a little bit about your Cadet Chronicles too.
Yeah. So Cadet Chronicles, it was interesting. So Cadet Chronicles is just, I had tried some different things. It started out with Cadet Chat. And Cadet Chat was maybe a couple years ago. It was kind of like a podcast in a sense. And I was really trying to promote the great things our students were doing. So meeting with different students and filming a podcast or what we called Cadet Chat at that time. And the episodes would run 20 to 30 minutes. And what I had found is just the way sometimes some people consume information, that it was a little too long for them. So we moved into Cadet Chronicles, and Cadet Chronicles was 2 to 3 minute, real quick sit down with a student athlete, someone in the marching band, someone in robotics, just the different great things that kids are doing. I started to incorporate staff and raise staff up that were doing great things, even some administration. I would use it to get out important messages as well. So interesting thing is now with Mr. Yates, as I mentioned, he's doing such a bang up job. The Cadet Chronicles maybe
you can get rid of
them. I'll totally get rid of them. I may, but that served a purpose for that time. And now when it's like, oh, I need to find someone for Cadet Chronicles. Oh, Mr. Yates already did a story on them.
Right.
So I was doing that to supplement our communications at that time. And now we seem to be in a good place. So we'll see what happens. I'll never say never.
Talk a little bit about your message on Fridays that you send out to staff.
Yeah, so I'd say maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I had gone to a professional development, and at that point, the CEO from Paychex was there, and he was talking about culture and messaging, and he talked about a live message or a quasi live message to your staff. So it was outside of my comfort zone, and I said, oh, I started messing around with a camera on my computer, and then started to investigate posting on YouTube and things like that. And then I said, oh, you know what? Instead of when I was in Byron Virgin, I used to send a written message to the staff on Fridays. What if I do a video and kind of messed around with it? The first time took me like 47 takes. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. But as I got more comfortable in front of the camera, usually I do it, and I'm okay with my imperfections, right? So if I mess something up, okay, the people are going to see me for who I am. That's who they see when I come to the classroom or in the hallway. So as long as it's not a major flub up, I let it rip. And so I do that I usually record The Secret. I don't record it on Friday morning. Some people thought I recorded it on Friday morning. I do record usually Thursday evening.
Yeah.
And really my goal there is to celebrate staff and students and the great things happening in the district. And then I weave in some informational items as well. So I don't want to make it too heavy on the important information, because it's funny, some staff members said, oh, geez, I listened to you while I'm getting ready for work. Or, oh, my spouse says they miss hearing you in the morning. And, I found that interesting. And I had torn my bicep tendon last year, and so I was out of work for a short time, and I couldn't film it. I wasn't able to do so, and it was really nice. A couple folks had either seen Debbie in the grocery store or mentioned to me, "Hey, you really missed your Friday message." And that was very validating, not necessarily for me on an ego standpoint, but that when I do that, people actually embrace that and appreciate that. I try to do a lot of connections between the buildings too, because if you're working in the elementary or high school, vice versa, you may not know what's going on in the other areas in the district. So I try to bridge that together.
And then what's it like connecting with students? Because you're right there, you're out and about in the schools, and you come into classrooms, you're talking to kids, so what's it like reaching out with students?
Well, that's the biggest thing I miss from teaching and coaching is the kids. My position now is the majority of my time is with adults, and that's great. I just really kind of like to ham it up sometimes with the kids. I like to build relationships. I got a buddy over at the middle school. He's a Dolphins fan. I always razz him because I'm a Bills fan. Just trying to connect. I think that there's no excuse why you should walk by someone and not say hello.
100%.
So anytime, whether it's a staff member, a student, hey, how's it going? How's your day going? I try to get into the cafeterias, the classrooms. I love coming into your classroom, and we'll have our football chat. Or if it's something else, I've been invited to different classrooms. One point, Pam Statmiller invited us into a phys ed class, and I ended up being a Christmas tree that needed to be decorated, and different things like that. It's really enjoyable to build those relationships. And with three children of my own in the district, I have a different angle too because of my children's friends. So I'm able to interact with them as well, whether it's in school or outside of school sometimes.
Yeah, there's also a picture on the website and your superintendent's page, and you're in a music classroom, and there's you and some other people. With
Sonia Volkmar, one of our music teachers over at Northwood, said, "Hey, are you a risk taker?" I said, "Yeah, we're risk takers." So I got the rest of the assistant superintendents, and she taught us how to play the ukulele during a class, and it was a hoot, and the kids were just blown away. So it was real fun for us as a team, but it was also fun with the kids, I think.
Hashtag We Are Hilton. Explain the meaning of that hashtag.
So you can link it back to a few things. There's quite the story behind We Are Penn State, and really how that came about. And it might be a little bit linked to that, but really we went to Ned, Kristen, Adam, and I, the assistant superintendents. We knew that we needed to do some professional learning around building organizational culture. So we had headed down to Harvard And now I can tell my father I'm Harvard educated. And
Is your dad still around, by the way?
my father is still around.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. My mother passed away about a year and a half ago. My father's still around. He still lives in the house that we grew up in. He's a retired social worker. He worked for Genesee County and was a caseworker and social worker. So he had a good run of community service and helping people as well. But so we had gone down to Harvard, and we worked with a gentleman by the name of Lauren Rubis. And Lauren Rubis is done a lot of research and practice, very practical around culture. And he worked for an NHL team. He worked for a major bank. He would get called in. He was a chief culture officer, if you will. So how do you make sure that you're retaining employees, you're supporting employees, you're making happy employees? So he really was from the private sector. So taking what we learned there. And so we learned from him a lot of different things. And when we started the strategic plan, one of our first goals was to identify what were the important values of everybody at Hilton. So whether you're a student, a bus driver, a teacher, an administrator, what's important to you. So we went through that process, and what emerged from that, number one, was integrity. So everybody, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what political affiliation you have, what you eat for breakfast. No one can disagree that integrity is one of the most important things we can do as human beings. The next was welcoming and affirming. So as a public school, we want to make sure that anyone who walks through our doors feels welcomed and affirmed, whether that is a teacher, it could be a custodian, it could be a parent, it could be anybody. So that was important. Hands down, that was important. The next thing was putting people first. That seems pretty basic, doesn't it? It's like the golden rule. Let's put people first. How do we treat people? How do we make people feel good about themselves and what they're doing? And last but not least was lifelong learning, because we're in the learning business. So whatever that is, whether that's a staff member learning something new, whether that's a student continuing to grow as they're a student here in the district. So when we talk about those, I know this is a long-winded answer, but when we talk about those, they're not Casey's words. They're not Mike's words. They're who we aspire to be and who we are and who we need to be. So when we say we are Hilton, that's what we are. So it's something that we're in the process of growing into, but at the end of the day, when I step away from doing this, and many of us step away from it, I hope that we can say that's who we are. We are Hilton. Not oh, I'm working on my integrity. No, this is who we are. So that's really where we are Hilton hashtag came from, and the focus behind that.
Nice. So going back a little bit to high school and college, did you have any influencers there? Any professors, teachers?
So John Crite was my high school football coach. He was the dean of students. He was an economics teacher, and he was my football coach. And he was absolutely huge on my development. I spent a lot of my time around the football program, and that was so important to me. I also had a mentor Jim Thompson, gave me my first administrative job. And so he was very influential. He taught me things that you don't learn in your coursework. And the emphasis is on relationships. And if you can work on being good with your relationship building, the rest will follow. So very interesting. I was a physical education teacher, and my first administrative job was an assistant principal at an elementary school. And the teachers were very suspect on what I would know about instruction because I was a physical educator.
Do you know when you got your job here that was one of
Yeah. I can
ahead.
imagine that. No, absolutely. So, this guy was a physical education teacher. Well, this is what it's not a comeback by any means, but when you're a physical education teacher, or you're a coach, or you're even now when I look at individuals teaching a student how to play a musical instrument, it's the biggest feedback loop ever, and I think that whether you're teaching how to make a proper jump shot, or you're teaching someone how to computate a math equation, they're very similar strategies. And so, I think that when I entered that position, did I have to learn a lot? Absolutely. But what Jim said he saw in me was leadership. And at the end of the day, yes, it's important to know how to teach and understand instruction, which I had to do in Leroy. I had to do in Bergen. I do it here, but not as much because of the size of the organization.
Right.
We have some other people that focus on that. But yeah, he was a big role model because he saw something in me and he took a chance on me. And then my father and my mother were both very, very great people. Like I said, my dad's still around. My mother's passed, but just they made a lot of sacrifices for my brother and I. I have a younger brother. His name's Joe. He's a school architect. He actually lives in Rochester as well. And he was, he and I had a great relationship with my parents, and my parents were very strict. There's right and wrong, and we don't do what everybody else does. And, what happens at the dinner table stays at the dinner table. And, at the time, it wasn't necessarily fun to be parented that way, but you look back at it and you greatly appreciate it. Like I said, my father was a social worker. My mother started out, she was a cashier at Tops Grocery Store in Batavia. My dad would work during the day. He would come home and we had one car. We would drive. I know that's crazy nowadays. Everybody has a car, everybody has a cell phone, but we lived in a modest ranch, and he would drive my mother to work. She would work from 7 p.m. To 11 p.m. And then he would be with us in the evening. And that's how they made ends meet. And, they were eventually my mother went on and she had several different jobs. Her favorite job and her last job was being the secretary to the elementary principal at Oakfield, Alabama. Because I think she thought she always wanted to be a teacher, but as an immigrant, she didn't think college was going to happen for her. And she never went to college. So she did that, and that was very fulfilling because she got to be around the children and really enjoyed that piece. So
you said she was an immigrant from England?
Yep.
Did she have an accent and everything?
She had somewhat of an accent. My grandmother, who's since passed, she had a very thick accent.
Yeah.
So they grew up in Liverpool.
Okay.
And so, the joke around the house was that my grandmother used to babysit the Beatles. I have no confirmation of that, but that was the joke. But yeah, you could tell if you didn't know her that she had a bit of an English accent flair. But my grandmother had a very thick, and my grandfather was from Ireland. So, the story behind that was you had Irish Catholic, you had Church of England. They were married on a side altar. There was all the different things that folks had to overcome. My grandmother lived through World War II. She used to tell us stories about, the rations. And then she had an opportunity. Incredible. Yeah, she always said, Casey and Joe, if I could hear the bomb, that was good. That means that we were still alive. And
no kidding.
Yeah. And she would talk about blackouts, that all the lights would go out in England when they were being bombed. And she had an opportunity to either work on a farm or work in the ammunition factory. And she didn't want to work on a farm. So she made ammunition during the war.
Wow. So you have, in terms of blood, you're Irish?
Yeah, so I'm predominantly Polish. So my father's 100% Polish.
Okay.
So I'm Polish, Irish, and English.
Cool. All right. I don't know why I asked that.
No, it's great.
In terms of then, you brought up relationships, so I wanted to delve into what's your relationship been, and how do you build a relationship with the school board? Because that's vitally important.
Oh, absolutely. So we have a very strong board of education here. We have folks who, there are quite a few board members who work in education. So they can understand some of the things that we're attempting to do. It's really good to have diversity on a board of education, whether it's diversity of thought, background, etc. And we do it. We have a diverse board. So I think that their number one priority, whether they have a different perspective or not, I can tell you each one of our board of education members cares about the students. So we might get there in a different way, but at the end of the day, they all care greatly about the kids. So we meet 2 times a month, but we also have conversations outside of that, in the sense of I give them a Friday update. I see many of them at different school events. This year at homecoming, the last couple of years, we've had a float together. So we do spend some time to get to know each other as people. We want to know about each other's families, and when we know each other that way, we can make our best decisions. And I think one of them, a lot of people understand this, but I'm an employee of the Board of Education. So sometimes people that are new to the education system that don't understand think that the superintendent is above the board, and actually that's not the case. The Board of Education are elected volunteers from the community It's actually the community school district. And the kids always crack me up like, hey, you own the school. No, I don't own the school. The taxpayers own the school.
Mhm.
They elect a representative, and that Board of Education hires a superintendent. So that's always fascinating. And I think sometimes people either don't understand that or it's new to them.
I haven't been to a school board meeting in a while, but I know you allow for public comments.
Mhm.
What's it like when, people are very, maybe somewhat animated and stuff like that, and you listen and stuff like that? What's that like?
Yeah, it's not the most pleasant thing to do. You take great pride in the work that you do.
Mhm.
So when something happens that, it might not be the proudest moment for the district, sometimes that's hard to hear. But the reality is, it may be personal, but I don't necessarily take it personal.
Mhm.
Happen to be the representative of the district. And I've really, through my years of experience, have learned to be able to take that feedback, take what's important out of that message. So sometimes people become emotional and they are angry. If I can parse out the anger and put that aside, there's probably a valid concern there. And how can I learn from that concern? How can I support them with that concern? And that's the same approach of the Board of Education.
Mhm.
When they hear those things, it's like, okay, but let's take a look at this. Let's listen to what they have to say. But I would say a lot of our folks that come to the board are decent in the way that they address things. And I always encourage people before you get to, and I'm not looking to dodge anything, but I can help people solve problems at my level before it gets to the board.
Right.
Often when it goes to the board then turns to me
Right.
and says, well, what are we going to do?
Right.
And how can we work together on this? Sometimes for some reason, people want to leapfrog from maybe the building level to the board. And that's not bad. I'm not judging. But if they take that extra step to meet with me and talk to me about their concern, I may be able to resolve it
Sure.
and save them a Tuesday night.
Sure. So throughout your career there, you were on the 2017 top workplace from the DNC Digital. You were recognized as Administrator of the Year. You were the I might pronounce it wrong, Tyler Van Giel Educational Leadership Award from the U of R.
Yep.
How did I do on the name of that?
That was great. That was great. Better than I did the first time I heard.
When you receive accolades like that, what's it feel like for you? I mean, like, how do you celebrate it?
I really don't.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a moment. I think we all should. I probably need to do better of that. Going back to my football playing days, the way that I coached and learned, it was, you win the game, you enjoy it for 24 hours, and then it's back to work because you have your next opponent. And almost to a flaw. I can remember in college a couple times having some really big wins and not enjoying them as much as I should have because I was so focused on preparing for the next game. And I think that that's not healthy. So doing a better job of enjoying it. Those awards really represent the work and not the work necessarily of me. A little bit. Okay, I put some effort in. I made some commitments to a greater good. But a lot of times, like when I look at that top workplace, that's a celebration of every employee and student and family here in Hilton. The one from U of R, I wrote my dissertation. That was around the work of my research. But I think all in all, when those moments happen, it's really about all the great work that we have done as a team in whatever organization I've been in.
What was your research about that you wrote your dissertation on?
So I had implemented a program called Video Coaching Program.
Okay.
And this was at Byron Burgeon. And we do that here at Hilton. And really it came from some of my athletic playing days. And when I played football, the games would be videoed and we would watch them on Monday. And you always played a heck of a game. And then you sat down and watched the video and you saw, I was an offensive guard. What block did I miss? Could I have gotten up to the linebacker quicker? Did I take the right three-step drop when I was pass protecting? All of those things. And my coach used to always say, and I don't think it was his original term. I've heard it from other football folks, but the eye in the sky doesn't lie.
Right.
So I said, it'd be fascinating to see what would it be like if a teacher had their lesson video recorded. So when I was at Leroy, I had dabbled with that and I worked with a teacher who is going to become an administrator, and we video recorded his class. And the first thing he said that morning we walked in, I bought a camera at Walmart. It was this, and it had a disc. I mean, the technology was so different. And he walked in, he goes, Casey, You won't believe it. I said okay 75 times in that lesson. And he had a laundry list of things that he wanted to improve upon. And not one of them I had to, it wasn't that I had to say, hey, Mike, you know, you when you close that lesson, did you check for understanding?
Mm-hmm.
This individual, I said, whoa, slow down. Let's not think so hard on ourselves. What are a couple things that you'd like to focus on and get better at? And that's when I realized, wow, this is magic. We know, as a teacher and a coach, the best is when you have someone engaged in their learning and they want to learn. So that's so moving forward, I partnered with Jim Thompson, my mentor. We implemented a program at Byron Burgeon, and then I wrote my dissertation on that, really to see what was effective about it, if it was effective, and what were the important variables if you were to implement a program. And the first one is it's non-evaluative. So when I say non-evaluative, it is evaluative in the sense that someone's evaluating their craft, but it's not evaluative in the sense of like a principal making an employment decision on them. So people have to feel vulnerable to go in front of the camera. I remember a kindergarten teacher in Bergen once said, I never knew what I looked like when I taught. Like, who is that lady on the camera? And, that was powerful too. So really, the importance is that, it's in a safe and secure environment. And I think the other part is it's partnership. The coach and the coachee, they're equals. And we're just talking about how we can get better at what we do. And then the teacher gets to choose what their goals are. They're not prescribed. So you watch the video and you say, oh boy, this is something I want to get better at. And then we work together to create a plan to make that better. So that's been powerful. We've implemented here in Hilton. I think we're in our 8th year here, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of teachers go through it. Mm-hmm. And to my knowledge, everyone's been very positive about it and said, boy, I wish we had more professional learning like this. So that's been a big hit, and it's been really good. And that's kind of how it all came about. And that was what my dissertation focus was.
Okay. What do you think's next for you in Hilton? And Hilton, I mean. And Hilton.
And Hilton, at Hilton. Well, Hilton is it, right? Mm-hmm. So some people ask me sometimes, are you going to do something different during your time as an administrator? And the answer is no. I live here. My kids are educated here. We're community members. Hilton is where I want to be. It's a great place to work and raise a family and live. So, I would say I'm 50. I'm going to be 50 years old in March. Mm-hmm. Life throws different things at you, mm-hmm. but if I'm in the good graces, I plan to retire from Hilton. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I'll do in retirement. Mm-hmm. I like I've talked a lot about football, but I like I like spending time with my family. Mm-hmm. I've kind of got into this hobby of collecting football helmets. So doing some things like that. People, are you gonna be an interim in another school district or something like that? And if you were to ask me today, no, I'm going to leave it all on the field here in mm-hmm. Hilton. And when my last game is played and my cleats are hung up, it's done. I'm not someone that I feel needs to. When I retire, I'll have been a school superintendent for 18 years. So I think at that point, I know there's different opinions about what I do, but, I've given what I've got, and I think it'll be on to something different.
That reference to leaving it all on the field, very good football reference. A few more questions and some more fun things. Casey Kosiorek's favorite food.
Oh, all food? No, I like, more of a buffalo cuisine, but I like a good beef on whack. Uh-huh. There's a restaurant that I go to back home. They call it, I don't know, it's like the Batavia Special, Batavia Original. Basically, it's a beef on whack, 6 chicken wings, and a mac salad. Mm. So I like that. I like some of the foods, definitely on the Polish side of my heritage, guamki and pierogi, and really enjoy some of that ethnic food. But I'm also a one for some great pizza and chicken wings.
Gotcha. Binge show or TV show?
So I've been binging, and I'm late to the game because this was I think it came out in was it the late 2000s. Friday Night Lights. Mm-hmm. So now I'm in my second time watching the series. So when I get on the treadmill in the morning, I think there's 5 seasons total. I think I'm in the 3rd season. But Friday Night Lights is what I'm binging right now.
My wife was in love with the coach. Now during that, I don't know, Sarah's in the quarterback. was actually dating the mother in the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because obviously when they're actors like
Yeah.
that, like a 25-year-old could be playing a 17-year-old, and
Yeah,
then Riggins.
yeah.
Oh, it's all good
Oh,
stuff.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
talk about that after. Favorite movie?
Rudy.
Rudy.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because tell the audience your favorite college team.
Yeah, my favorite college football team is Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State is a close second.
Mm-hmm.
I root for the Buffalo Bills, and I root for Hilton, and then I root for my my high school that I attended, Batavia. So those are, but Hilton's first.
Bills first. Yeah, those you can't really see it, but the next corner he's got play like a champion today. And for those that don't know, that's a Notre Dame through and through mantra. Favorite book?
It would probably. I mean, we talked a little bit about him recently. Some of my latest reading was Dave Goggins, and just real interesting. And I was reading him during some of the most intense times in my leadership career.
Sure.
And he, you know, like I said, he's rather crude in some of the way that he communicates, but the lessons and the self reflection was great. So he's got a couple books out that I read recently, and outside of that, outside of following my kids' athletics and the job and things like that, I haven't. It's been professional reading at this point, not much leisure reading.
Gotcha. Favorite quote?
Maya Angelou. And people will remember the way that you made them feel.
Okay.
And I think really the essence of that quote is doesn't matter what you do, but it's how you make people feel. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it down perfectly, but I think that applies to everything, whether in my dad role, in my son role, in my superintendent role, in my husband role. I think that that's so important, and the rest will fall in place. And you know, at the end of the day, that's, I hope, when I do retire or walk away or whatever the timing is for me, and it is that people say, you know what, maybe I didn't always agree with Casey, but I knew he cared about me and he was a good guy. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, and I can say that for sure. I got a couple more questions, but
Yeah.
every time I come away from you or interaction is, that guy just listened to me, and he's like the biggest thing in the school district, and you got a great wife, and your kids are great too. If you could pick anybody from history to have dinner with, who would it be and why?
I'm going to go back to football. I'd be very fascinated to sit down with Joe Paterno.
Okay.
Just very interested about his approach early in his career and how he built the tradition at Penn State. I think there's a lot. I mean, there could be some political folks. I always was a big fan of Ronald Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting. So yeah, those are a couple.
Would you let them pick up the tab, or would you do it?
Oh no, I'd probably have to pick up the tab.
All right, last question, and then a couple comments. What makes a successful learning community, and how does your leadership help conquer those goals?
I think when you can provide psychological safety and welcomeness, I think that's first and foremost. So people have to be comfortable with who they are, and they have to feel welcomed. So public school is unique in the sense that we educate everyone. We don't choose who goes to school here. People who are born in the Hilton community, from all different backgrounds, maybe they've moved from another city or state or country. They may have different beliefs, but I believe that everybody, no matter what, has a right to a public education, and a good one for that matter. So I think when we can create a welcoming and supportive environment, like I said, the rest will fall in place, but it will. When you take care of those needs of shelter and food and water and psychological safety, those kids are going to learn better than if you're not meeting those needs. Mm-hmm. So, I wasn't always a believer of that. Mm-hmm. When I started teaching, I remember they implemented character education, and I was like, what's this? Shouldn't the parents be doing this? Why are we having to do this? And I learned over time that although it would be ideal if families always made sure that students came to us the way that we would hope that they would come, that people have so many different life circumstances that we shouldn't judge, that we should learn about, and that we can support, because the students that we educate are going to end up being our future. They're going to be our neighbors, and that we want good people. And of course we want smart people that have a trade or a career and can be productive. But I think we're in the people business. And like I said, as much as we want people to know how to do math equations, we want them to be good people. We want to support them in their development.
And if you could give 3 words to describe Hilton, what would it be?
Pride. Number one is pride. This one of the reasons why I had applied to the Hilton opening and vacancy, if you will, is because of the great amount of pride. Everyone that I talk to, whether they live here now or they've left or whatever, they are so prideful to be a Hilton cadet. So, I'd anchor into those cadet intentional values because those are who we are. We are Hilton. And I think that there is a great amount of integrity here, great pride of integrity with our families and with our staff, etc. And, I think the third one would be the people first. I've really seen a community that cares greatly for their fellow community members.
Well, Casey, thank you very much for coming on the Big H podcast.
The honor's all mine.
You have to be the highest profile so far on it. This has been Consultin with Casey. It's great when a person who reaches so many will come on a platform such as this to send out his message. You can follow me on YouTube at the Big H Podcast, on X at Michael Heiss 17. Michael Heiss is all capitalized, and 17, we know what number that is, Josh Allen, or Spotify or Rumble at the Big H Podcast. Future guests include Katie Caprino, Terry Gilmore, Tim Ann, Dave Marine, and others. Casey, good luck in the future, and thank you very much for joining me, and you all for tuning in.
Yeah, pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much. Go Cadets.
The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll wow. Laugh and learn, stay a while. Let's explore that Hilton style. From the highs to the lows, every story just explodes. Mike's got questions on the go, diving deep from head to toe. Every week the guests align, sharing moments so divine. Stay with us, the pace is fine. Every episode you'll find. The Big H Podcast, tune in now. Conversations that'll